Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatvam Prapta Sakalyana Gurunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Prapta Sakalyana Gurunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tananrita Gita Baditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu Romancha Kampasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shingara Tanma Niramarjanado Shri Vigrahara Juktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatapi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Satana Truptam Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturveda Shri Bhagavat Prasado Satana Truptam Kridvaiva Truptim Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shiradikama Dabayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupanamna Shri Radhika Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Ne kunjayuno ratikali siddhai jayali bir yukti apekshaniya ne kunjayuno ratikali siddhai jayali bir yukti tatrati dakcha Otivalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Saksha Dharitena Shamasta Shashre Pruktas Tatha Vavyataiva Sadhavi Sakyadari Vena Shashri Sastatava Pinto Praborja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Yasya prasadam Bhagavat prasadam Yasya prasadam Nagati kutapi Yasya prasadam Yasya prasadam Yayam stubam tasya Yasatri sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Yayam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada Jai Jai Gurudev 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 Jai Jai Gurudev Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachata Desha Tarine Namaste Deve Goravane Matarine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Gaur Nityananda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Bol Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Hariyaraya Namah Krishna Jadavaya Namah Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah Hare Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Vataraguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Shri Radha Nilamadhava Radha Nilamadhava Radhe Jaya Jagana Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadrama Jaya Sudarshan Chakra Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo 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 Nitai Gora Haribo Jaya Vishnupara Paramhansa Prabhupada Astuttara Sarasishya Maharaj Divine Grace Abhachar Vina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Pratishta Bibidi Samstapakacharya Vaishnava Siromani Patit Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Om Vishnupara Paramhansa Prabhupada Astuttara Sarasishya Maharaj Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patita Udhar Ki Jai Shri Rup Sanatana Bhattar Gunata Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Anantakur Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Ki Jai Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Prema Nama Sankirtane Ka Janaka Prema Purushottama Sachinandana Shiman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu गोरा हरि मावरना अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान इनम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहद निदांग ट्रांसडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। शिष्य राधा कृष्ण गोप गुप्तना राधा कुंज सम कुंज गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रज भूमि वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय। जय लौशिव श्री राधा नीला माधव की जय। श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। जगन्नाथ स्वामी भगवान की जय। जय गंगा माय जमुना माय की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्तविंद की जय। Gaurari Pramanande Haribo. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga Haribo.
Namaste. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Pralada lada dayini. Ayin Singha Hidayin Singha. Hiranyakashipu Bhakshahai. Silatam Kanakalaye. Ito Nishinga Parato Nishinga. Yato Yato Yamita To Nishinga. Ahi Nishinga, Hirdaye Nishinga. Narashinamadin Saranam Prapade.
Narashinamadin Saranam Prapade.
Tavakara Kamala Bade Nakam. Adbhuta Singam Lalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadesha Hare Jaya Jagadesha Hare Jagadeshare
Baba Kara Kamalavare Naka Adbhuta Singha Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanuvringa Kesavadrita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re
Keshavajita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadesha Re Jai Jagadesha Hare, Jai Jagadesha Hare. Keshavadita Narahari Rupa, Jai Jagadesha Hare, Jai Jagadesha Hare, Jai Jagadesha Hare. Jaya Narasingha De, Jaya Narasingha De, Jaya Narasingha De, Jaya Narasingha De,
Jaya Narasingha De, Jaya Narasingha De, Jaya Narasingha De, Jaya Narasingha De.
Jaya Narasingha De, 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 Bhagavan ki jai.
Jai.
Bhakti Prahlad Maharaj ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
Hari Hari Bol.
Vrindaye Tulsidevaya Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Paridevi Satyavratai Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsidevaya Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satyavratai Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsidevaya Priyaye Keshavasya Cha Vishnu Bhakti Pradidevi Satyavratai Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsidevi Maharani ki jai.
Krishna Priyasi Namo Namaha.
Shri Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Ye Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Ye Abhilasi.
Radha Krishna Seva Pava Abhilasi.
Je tumhara sharan lo tara vancha purna ho.
Kumara Sharanalo वांछा पूर्ण होए
कृपा करे करो तारे वृंदावन वासी
कृपा कोरि करो तारे वृंदावन
वासी मोरा विलास कुंज दियो विलास कुंज दियो नायने हेरी बो सदा जुगल रूपरासी
नायने रिवो सदा युगल रूपरासी
ए निवेदन धरो साखीरानो गाता करो
निवेदन गार सखीरान गाता करो
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी
दीन कृष्ण दासे को ये जन मोरा
दीन कृष्ण दासी को ये नमो
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा ये नभासी
श्री राधा गोविंद
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा ये नभासी
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे
सदा ये नभासी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणं पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि पामहत्यधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणं पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणं पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्याधिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम
राम
हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम
हरे राम Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani,
Jaya Tulsi Maharani,
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Vrinda Devi, 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 Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol,
Tagora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol,
Nittai Gaura Hari
Hari
Bol,
Bol.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada,
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Tagora Hari Bol.
Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai, Vrindaye Tulsi Devai, Priyaye Keshavasya cha, Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Satyavrataya Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Deva, Priyaye Keshavasya cha, Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Satyavrataya Namo Namaha.
Daya Tulsi Devai.
Vrindaye Tulsi Deva, Priyaye Keshavasya cha, Vishnu Bhakti Prati Devi Satyavrataya Namo Namaha. Vrindaye Tulsi Devi Maharani ki jai. O Tulasi, beloved of Krishna, I bow before you
again and again.
I
I desire to obtain the
obtain the
service of
services
Shri Radha and Krishna.
Whoever
Whoever
takes
takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled, bestow
bestowing
your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan. Thus, within my vision, I would always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavitams of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise, may I always swim in love of Shri Shri Radha and Govinda.
Tulsi Devi Maharani ki
Ki Jai.
Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam ki jai. Cheto darpanamarjanam bhava mahatavagni nivapanam
Sheyakadika Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Shradanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Smaraninna Kala etadrisi tava kripaya bhagavan mamapi durdhaivamidrisham ya janina nuraga trinadapi sunichena tarorapi sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtanya sada hari na dhanam na janam na sundarim kavitam bhajagarisha kamaye mama janmani janmanishwari bhavatar bhakti rahaitu kitvai ainandatanu kinkaram patitam mam visame bhavam buddho kripaya tava pada pankajasti taduli sadrisham vichintaya nayanam galorashrudharaya bhajanam gadagadrudaya gira ulakaya chitam bapu kada tavanam grahani bhavisati Jugaitam nimishena chakyusha pravrisaitam Sunyaitam jagat sarvam govinda virahena me Asri shabapadaраtam pinastumam Adashanam marmahatam karotuva Yatatatava vidadhatu lampato Matpranatastu saevana paraha Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Shri Chaitanya Siksastikam
Ki Jai. Namo Mahaprabhu.
Namaste Saraswati Devi. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to the living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy name, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than a straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your holy name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastikam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy names of the Lord that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent names of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature in pursuance of the Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination. 6. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities or karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. 10. To not have complete faith in the chanting of holy names and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting, Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava and devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpa tarabhyascha kripa sindhu bhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Vaishnava Thakur ki jai. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraja ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadyasya yato niviyat itaratas chartesu avigyaswarat.
Janmadyasya yatam vayaritaratas jate svavigyasvara.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha.
Tejo Varimedam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargomisha. Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of all the manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It's the only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations.
Of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Of water seen on fire, of land seen on water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma projita kaitravotcha.
Dharma projita kaitavutra.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Vedyam vastavam atra vastu.
Vedyam vastavam astra vastu.
Shivadam tapo trayam mulanam.
Shivadam taputrayam mulanam.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Kim va purir Ishwaraha.
Kim va parir Ishwaraha.
Sadyo hridi avarudyate tra.
Sadyo hridi avarudyate tra.
Kriti bihi sususubhistakshanat.
Kriti bihi sususubhistakshanat.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are material motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the high truth.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth is the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
Is sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
By this culture of knowledge.
By this culture of knowledge.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
The supreme law is established within its heart.
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam.
Nigama kalpator galitam phalam.
Sukamukad amrita dravya samyutam.
Shukamukad amrita drava sangitam.
Pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam.
Muhur ahorasika bhuvi bhavukaha.
Mur ahorasika bhuvi bhavuka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad
the
Bhagavatam.
mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literature.
The mature fruit, the desire tree of Vedic literature.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadev Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shravantam Swakata Krishna,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Hridyantakstohi Abhadrani,
Hridyantastohi Abhadrani,
Vidunoti Suhitsatam.
Vidunoti Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literature,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
is itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And from who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling within everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
acts as his best wishing friend, and purifies his body, who constantly engage in hearing from him.
Nasta presu abhadresu
Nasta prayesha bhadreshu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
nityam bhagavata sevaya
bhagavati uttamasloke
bhagavati uttama shloke
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
bhaktir bhavati naistikhi.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the
he
devotees,
becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
it becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo bhava
kamaloba dayaschaye
kamalobhadayaschaye
cheta etar anavidam
cheta eternavidam
stitvam sattve prasidati.
stitam sarve prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes, by development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance.
one becomes free from the modes of passion of ignorance.
And thus, material lusts and avarice are diminished.
And thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanna manaso
bhagavat bhakti yogataha
bhagavat bhakti yogata
bhagavat tattva vijnanam
bhagavat tattva vijnanam
mukta sangasya jayate.
mukta sangasya jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in position of pure goodness,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understand the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis,
Vidyate rudaya grantis
chidyante sarvasamsaya,
chidyante sarva samshaya
siyante chasya karmani,
chidyante sacha karmani
drista evat manishware.
drusta evad.
Thus, bhakti yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of the material
and
affection
enables one to come at once to the stage of samsayam samagram,
and enables us to come at once to the stage of Assumption Samagram,
understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
understanding of the Supreme Absolute True Personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees
in Krishna consciousness
in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 18, verse number 29. Adbhuta Purva Sahasa
Adbhuta Purva Sahasa
Sutrid Vidyam Arditatmanaha
Kyutridbhyam Arditatmanaha
Brahmanam Pratabid Abud Brahman
Brahmanam Pratyabhut Brahman
Matsaro Manyur Evacha.
Matsaro Manu Evacha.
Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O Brahmanas, the king's anger and envy directed toward the Brahmana sage were unprecedented, being that circumstances had made him hungry and thirsty. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. For a king like Maharaja Parikshit to become angry and envious, especially at a sage and Brahmana, was undoubtedly unprecedented. The king knew well that Brahmanas, sages, children, women, and old men are always beyond the jurisdiction of punishment. Similarly, the king, even though he commits a great mistake, is never to be considered a wrongdoer. But in this case, Maharaj Parikshit became angry and envious at the sage due to his thirst and hunger. By the will of the Lord, the king was right to punish his subject for coldly receiving him or neglecting him, but because the culprit was a sage and a Brahmana, it was unprecedented. As the Lord is never envious of anyone, so also the Lord's devotee is never envious of anyone. The only justification for Maharaj Parikshit's behavior is that it was ordained by the Lord. Srimad Bhagavatam, Grantaraj ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we see that sometimes Krishna will place his devotees in a situation where, by making a mistake, it precipitates some purpose of the Lord. So in the case of Arjuna, he seemed to be an illusion, refused the order of the Lord, and that precipitated the Lord speaking the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, and Arjuna asking him so many questions. And in this case, Maharaj Parikshit, due to the urges of hunger and thirst, became angry and envious of the Brahmana, and he did something that he shouldn't have done. But that precipitated the narration of the Srimad Bhagavatam expanded. Of course, Sukadev Goswami heard the Bhagavatam while he was in the womb of his mother from his father Vyasadeva. But later on, when he recited it to Maharaj Parikshit, because Maharaj Parikshit was asking him many questions, he expanded the Bhagavatam. And the Bhagavatam is not something static. It can be expanded. Just like now, Vyasadeva is writing the Vedas for the next Satya Yuga. Right now, in Bhadrak Ashram. Of course, if you go there, you might not see him. But Madhava Chandra saw him 1,200 years ago when he went there to show him his Bhagavad Gita purports. And Vyasadeva approved of them. So there are many things that we don't see, but if we become purified and the coverings of our spiritual senses are removed, the coverings of lust, anger, greed, and so forth, then our spiritual senses begin to act. This is explained by Srila Prabhupada in many different places. And then we can see Krishna face to face, even in this world, and see great personalities like Vyasadeva and others who are still in this world. So Maharaj Parikshit becomes angry and envious. Well, that's not the normal behavior of a great sage like Maharaj Parikshit. So we have to understand that someone of his caliber is not a low-class person. So therefore, this is the will of the Lord in order to execute the plan of the Lord, which was to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam recited by Sukadev Goswami, which is the only solution for all suffering in Kali Yuga, and also the only solution by which people can become liberated from the cycle of birth and death and go back to Godhead, even in this age of so many unfavorable circumstances. But as we've said before, there are some very special blessings of Kali Yuga. One, of course, is Kalir Dosanide Rajan Asti Mahadguna, that simply by chanting Hare Krishna sincerely, you can go back to Godhead in this lifetime. And the second one is that if you think of something sinful, you don't get the karmic reaction. Although in previous ages, just thinking of something sinful, you would get a karmic reaction. And number three, even if you don't perform devotional service, but you think of doing it, you get the benefit of doing it. So there are some real special, let's say, advantages of Kali Yuga. And of course, there are very many disadvantages. But the devotees take advantage of these things. However, there's something even more significant. And that is explained in Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th canto. Let's see. 8th canto, texts 36 and 37, in the prayers of Queen Kunti. And this is really important. It is Srimad Bhagavatam, canto 1, chapter 8, verse 36 and 37. So verse 36 says, O Krishna, those who continuously hear, chant, and repeat your transcendental activities, or take pleasure in others doing so, certainly see your lotus feet, which alone can stop the repetition of birth and death. So you see, you can actually see Krishna not only in the deity form, but actually see him in the way he presented himself to Arjuna and so forth. It's possible. We should not doubt this. So in the purport to this verse by Kunti Devi, and it's a very famous verse, Shinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Abhikshanasa Smaranti Nandanti Tavehitam Jana Taeva Pasyanti Achiren Tavakam Bhava Pravahoparamam Padam Bhujam. Very, very nice verse, very beautiful poetry. So, Prabhupada explains that in order to see Krishna, one has to change his present vision by developing a different condition of life full of spontaneous love of Godhead. When Sri Krishna was personally present on the face of the globe, not everyone could see him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Materialists like Ravana, Hiranyakashipu, Kamsa, Jarasandha, and Sisupala were highly qualified personalities by acquisition of material assets, but they were unable to appreciate the presence of the Lord. Therefore, even though the Lord may be present before our eyes, it's not possible to see him unless we have the necessary vision. This necessary qualification is developed by the process of devotional service only, beginning with hearing about the Lord from the right sources. The Bhagavad Gita is one of the popular literatures which are generally heard, chanted, repeated, etc. by the people in general. But in spite of such hearing, etc., sometimes it is experienced that the performer of such devotional service does not see the Lord eye to eye. The reason is that the first item, Shravana, is very important. If hearing is from the right sources, it acts very quickly. Generally, people hear from unauthorized persons. Such unauthorized persons may be very learned by academic qualifications, but because they do not follow the principles of devotional service, hearing from them becomes a sheer waste of time. Sometimes the texts are interpreted fashionably to suit their own purposes. Therefore, First, one should select a competent and bona fide speaker and then hear from him. When the hearing process is perfect and complete, the other processes become automatically perfect in their own way. There are different transcendental activities of the Lord, and each and every one of them is competent to bestow the desired result, provided the hearing process is perfect. In the Bhagavatam, the activities of the Lord begin from his dealings with the Pandavas. There are many other pastimes of the Lord in connection with his dealings with the Asuras and others. And in the 10th canto, the sublime dealings with his conjugal associates, the gopis, as well as with his married wives at Dwarka, are mentioned. Since the Lord is absolute, there's no difference in the transcendental nature of each and every dealing of the Lord. But sometimes people, in an unauthorized hearing process, take more interest in hearing about his dealings with the gopis. Such an inclination indicates the lusty feelings of the hearer. So a bona fide speaker of the dealings of the Lord never indulges in such hearings. Now, I'll stop right there. There's an example of this that happened in ISKCON. In the 1970s, there was a group that formed in Los Angeles called the, I hope I don't get this wrong, the Gopi Baba group. And their point was they didn't want to hear about anything else except Krishna's intimate pastimes with the gopis. Because Prabhupada does write in the Krishna book that if you hear these things correctly, spoken by a proper devotee, then your desires for sex can be purified, and so forth. So they picked up on that one statement, and they started having private meetings, not in the temple room, but in people's houses or apartments, and men and women together were hearing about only about the intimate pastimes of Radha and Krishna and the gopis. So when Prabhupada heard about this, he summoned the leader of the group and maybe some of the others, and he spoke to them and he said, if you want to focus on one thing, then focus on Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada, Yasya Prasadana Nagatir Katopi. Or focus on Guru Mukha Padma Vaikya Chiteta Kariya Aikya. That is, only by the mercy of Krishna can one get the benediction of Krishna. Without pleasing the spiritual master, one cannot make any spiritual advancement. Or, my only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from the lotus lips of my spiritual master. So Prabhupada said, if you want to concentrate on one thing, you concentrate on either one of these verses. But they were concentrating on hearing only about the gopis. And here Prabhupada says that this is sometimes people in an unauthorized hearing process take more interest in hearing about the dealings with the gopis. Such an inclination indicates the lusty feelings of the hearer. So a bona fide speaker of the dealings of the Lord never indulges in such hearings. One must hear about the Lord from the very beginning, as in the Srimad Bhagavatam or any other scriptures, and that will help the hearer attain perfection by progressive development. That's the key word, progressive development. Slow, steady, progressive development, hearing every day, preferably morning and evening, and discussing the philosophy. Why? One should not therefore consider his dealings with the Pandavas are less important than his dealings with the gopis. That's the point. We must always remember that the Lord is always transcendental to all mundane attachment. In all the above-mentioned dealings of the Lord, he is the hero in all circumstances, and hearing about him or about his devotees or combatants is conducive to spiritual life. So not only hearing about him and his devotees, but also his combatants, people fighting against him. And hearing about him or about his devotees or combatants is conducive to spiritual life. It is said that the Vedas and Puranas, etc., are all made to revive our lost relation with Him. Hearing of all these scriptures is essential. So therefore, someone can say, well, why are they talking about Hiranyakashipu and Ravana and Kamsa and Sisupala, all these demons? They should only talk about what's going on in the spiritual world. There's no demons there. No. Because you have to know what not to do in order to understand perfectly what to do. You see? If you never learn about what not to do, then you can make many mistakes doing what you should do. So now the next verse, and this is what I wanted to read today. Text 37 says, "O my Lord, you have executed all duties yourself. Are you leaving us today? Though we are completely dependent on your mercy and have no one else to protect us. Now, when all kings are at the enmity with us, In other words, what he's saying is, look, we won the battle of Kurukshetra. What Kunti Devi is saying, we won the battle, my sons won the battle of Kurukshetra. But those kings that were killed, their kids, their grandkids are still there. And they're going to be vengeful because you killed their dads or uncles or relatives, right? So she's saying, now when all kings are at enmity with us. And in purport, Prabhupada writes, the Pandavas are most fortunate because with all good luck, they were entirely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. In the material world, to be dependent on the mercy of someone else is the utmost sign of misfortune. But in the case of our transcendental relation with the Lord, it is the most fortunate case when we can live completely dependent on Him. The material disease is due to thinking of becoming independent of everything. But the cruel material nature does not allow us to become independent. The false attempt to become independent of the stringent laws of nature is known as material advancement of experimental knowledge. Ouch. The material advancement of experimental knowledge, that's exactly what they're teaching in schools today. And because of that, they're misleading whole generations of kids. The false attempt to become independent of the stringent laws of nature is known as material advancement of experimental knowledge. The whole material world is moving on this false attempt of becoming independent of the laws of nature. Yes, they want to overcome birth, death, old age, and disease. They want to. Have they overcome birth? No. They have all these different contraceptive methods. Still, the population of the world is increasing. Right? It might be decreasing in one country, it's doubling in another country. See? So they can't stop that. And have they stopped that? No. They're saying that more people will die this year in the United States than in previous times. I'm not sure if that's really true, but they're saying that. So you see, birth, death, old age, disease. Have they stopped old age? They haven't stopped old age. Nancy Pelosi is an old lady. She's in her 80s, right? But when she gets her shots of Botox, she looks like she's like 50, 60 years old. See? So it's all phony stuff. It's all nonsense. So, therefore, the whole material world is moving on the false attempt of becoming independent of the laws of nature. Beginning from Ravana, who wanted to prepare a direct staircase to the planets of heaven, down to the present age, they are trying to overcome the laws of nature. They are trying now to approach distant planetary systems by electronic mechanical power. But the highest goal of human civilization is to work hard under the guidance of the Lord and become completely dependent on Him. So this is what we should listen and meditate on today. But the highest goal of human civilization is to work hard under the guidance of the Lord and become completely dependent on Him. The highest achievement of perfect civilization is to work with valor, it means courage, but at the same time depend completely on the Lord. not only valor means not only courage, but also it means you're in the mode of goodness, let's say. The Pandavas were the ideal executors of this standard of civilization. Undoubtedly, they were completely dependent on the goodwill of Lord Sri Krishna, but they were not idle parasites of the Lord. They were all highly qualified both by personal character and by physical activities. Still, they always looked for the mercy of the Lord because they knew that every living being is dependent by constitutional position. That is, we can't escape it. That's by constitution. That's who we are, to be dependent on the Lord. The perfection of life is, therefore, to become dependent on the will of the Lord. Just see how many times he's repeating this, the will of the Lord, right? Instead of becoming falsely independent in the material world. Those who try to become falsely independent of the Lord are called anatta, or without any guardian. Whereas those who are completely dependent on the will of the Lord are called sanata, or those having someone to protect them. Therefore, we must try to be sanata, so that we can always be protected from the unfavorable condition of material existence. By the deluding power of the external material nature, we forget that the material condition of life is the most undesirable perplexity. By the deluding power of the external material nature, we forget that the material condition of life is most desirable perplexity. The Bhagavad Gita therefore directs us, 7:19, that after many, many births, one fortunate person becomes aware of the fact that Vasudeva, or Krishna, is all in all, and that the best way of leading one's life is to surrender unto him completely. This is the sign of a Mahatma. All the members of the Pandava family were Mahatmas in household life. Maharaj Yudhisthira was the head of these Mahatmas, and Queen Kunti was the mother. The lessons of the Bhagavad Gita and all the Puranas, specifically the Bhagavata Purana, are therefore inevitably connected with the history of the Pandava Mahatmas. For them, separation from the Lord was just like the separation of a fish from water. Srimati Kunti Devi therefore felt such separation like a thunderbolt, and the whole prayer of the queen is to try to persuade the Lord to stay with them. After the battle of Kurukshetra, although the inimical kings were killed, their sons and grandsons were still there to deal with the Pandavas. It is not only the Pandavas who were put into the condition of enmity, but all of us are always in such a condition, and the best way of living is to become completely dependent on the will of the Lord, and thereby overcome all difficulties of material existence. So how many times did he say that? Dependent on the will of the Lord. At least 7, 8 times. You can see how it's important. And in one place he said, dependent on the goodwill of the Lord. That's even more important because the will of the Lord is always good. It's not bad. So there is a motto here, and that motto is, the perfection of life is therefore to become dependent on the will of the Lord instead of becoming falsely independent in the material world. That is the motto that we should meditate on every day. And to become dependent on the will of the Lord and the good will of the Lord, we have to follow the regulative principles strictly and chant very good, minimum 16 rounds, maximum, no maximum, every day, and engage in devotional service, and especially this hearing and chanting on a regular basis to stay on the straight and narrow path of pure devotional service. So we'll stop right there. Are there any questions or comments?
Yes, well, is it kind of a bit of like a comment about
okay.
what happened to Parikshit Maharaj? It's really, like Prabhupada mentioned, that really like very extreme. That's such a great devotee, and he committed like really abominable acts, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, and then how can we say the Lord protects his devotee from committing such a things? So that's the other way to say it.
The Lord always protects his devotee by giving him not only knowledge, but also realization. In the case of Maharaj Parikshit, he was put in that situation, just like Arjuna was put into that situation for a purpose of the Lord. That's different than an ordinary person like us committing an abominable act. So, like for example, when Brahma became attracted to his own daughter, Vak, does that mean he's a low-class person? No, he is the first recipient of knowledge from Krishna, right? We repeat that every day. So we have to understand we should never criticize the empowered devotees of the Lord. We should look rather at what happens as a consequence of their acts. And in the case of Arjuna, we were blessed by the Krishna-speaking Bhagavad Gita. In the case of Maharaj Parikshit, we're blessed by Sukadeva Goswami and Sutta Goswami and Sanaka Rishi speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? So that, therefore, phalena parichyate, always judge from the result. And if the result is not immediate, just be patient and see what the outcome is. So, in the case of Arjuna and Maharaj Parikshit, the outcome was extremely positive. And both of them are grihastas, by the way. And the whole family of the Pandavas, they were all grihastas, but they all attained the position of Mahatmas. Right? Why? Because they always depended on the will of the Lord. They never acted independently. Although sometimes they wanted to, but they didn't. So these are big lessons that we have to learn. And if we learn them, then we can stay for our whole life in Krishna consciousness and either take birth again to preach or go back to Godhead. Either way, it doesn't matter, because Krishna consciousness is the same in the material world as it is in the spiritual world. It's all transcendental.
So could we assume, or could we say that in general it's not good to criticize if somebody has committed wrong? We know it's not up to us to judge. Could you say that?
That's not right. No, that's a Christian saying. Judge not that ye be not judged. No, you have to judge, especially if you're a leader, because you have to protect the people that you are leading. However, if a person, even if they commit some abominable act, are willing to be rectified by continuing in devotional service, like for example, I know someone who murdered someone. He's a devotee, and he murdered another devotee. So he was rightfully convicted of murder, and he has a life sentence in jail. But in jail, he's chanting 16 or plus rounds every day and following the rules and regulations, because he's in jail, right? And he's a devotee. Now, should we let him out of jail because he's chanting 16 rounds? No. Why should you let him? He killed someone. The more he suffers in this world, the less he'll suffer in the next lifetime. But he should be given all credit of being a devotee because he's strictly following. So we shouldn't criticize him. Rather, we should look at him as an example. See? But if a person commits some abominable acts and repents, and then does it again, and again repents, and then does it again, and again repents, then there shouldn't be any more, giving them chance, because he's a rascal. But if he commits a abominable act, accepts the punishment, and strictly follows Krishna consciousness, such a person should not be criticized. But they might not let him out of jail. But what's the difference? Whether you chant 16 rounds and follow the rules and regulations in jail, we're all in jail anyway. We're in the jail of the material body right now. So we're all in jail. No one is actually independent. You say.
And where forgiveness should be applied?
If a person is willing to continue in devotional service under proper guidance. But if they keep making the same mistake over and over again, then, at one point, just like the son of Duryodhana, Aswatthama, he was cursed to always suffer until the end of of Brahma's lifetime for the things that he did. He didn't do only one thing. He did several things. He threw Brahmastra twice at the Pandavas, right? So, and other things, he killed their kids. So he was cursed, and he's still alive today, but he's not allowed to participate in regular society, and he's always an outcast. And he has a symbol of a more or less like a scalped head. So it's a symbol of shame. But he can be redeemed if he takes up Krishna consciousness sincerely. He's not going to stop the curse, but he'll be liberated from the curse by the mercy of the Lord, because he learned his lesson. That's why in a criminal case, after the criminal is convicted, that's the first step of the trial. The second step of the trial. First they're indicted, and then they have the trial, and then they get convicted. But then the third step is they have to hear the relatives of the victim. And then they're given a chance to say something, like, I'm sorry I did this, I realize now that I did something wrong. Or they said, I would do it again, and you give me a chance, I'll go out and kill somebody else. So they're given a chance to explain that now they've understood what they did wrong, or they can say, I didn't understand anything and I'll do it again, right? So then the judge gives the final verdict. If they say, I'm sorry, I was crazy, I should have never done it, and I'm sincerely sorry, I want to pay, if I can pay reparations to the family, I'll do anything I can. So then, that doesn't mean they're not going to sentence him, but it might be a little bit less severe than if he says, screw you, I'm glad I did it. So the whole purpose of the trial is for the perpetrator to understand that what he or she did was wrong, and that they should be very sorry and repentant, and going to jail is a remedial measure for them. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, in the purport. Somebody else. He said that the Brahmanas, children, women, old men, shouldn't be punished, right?
It says that, yeah.
And we see that the children usually get punished,
Well, no, children less than 14 years old. It's in the Bhagavatam also. More than 14, they get punished. They're considered an adult. And Brahmanas normally should not be punished, but if someone is a Dvija Bandhu, an unqualified son of a Brahmana, he's not a Brahmana, so you can punish him, like Aswatthama, because he didn't act like a bona fide Brahmana.
Krishna Maharaj, so there is one phrase here about Sanatha.
Anatta and Sanatha.
So, and then there's also Sanatana Dharma. Is there?
It's different.
It's
different.
different.
Sanata means that you have the protection of the Lord. And anatta means you don't have the protection of the Lord. It's different. There's a very nice verse by, I think it's a Sri Vaishnava verse. I'll find it. I'll read it to you tomorrow. It's a very nice verse. Prabhupada speaks about it. I think it's a Sri Vaishnava verse, or maybe it's in the Bhagavatam, but I'll read it to you. Sanata and anatta. It has nothing to do with sanatan.
Yeah, that is eternal.
Yeah. Nata means the Lord. So anatta, you're not under the protection of the Lord. Sanata, you're under the protection of the Lord. So natvar, or so many names where there's not in it. Nata. It means the Lord. Jagannatha.
Yeah.
He's the Lord of the
The Lord of the
universe.
universe.
Jagannatha.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then I think you
Speak
were
louder
talking-
into the
you-
microphone.
You were talking about the punishment. I think somewhere else Prabhupada talks about how the punishment by the state is actually a mercy on the perpetrator so that they stop committing more sins.
Not only that, so that in the next life, they don't get severe, very severe reaction because
Reaction.
they should have got it in this life.
Correct.
It's saving them from extremely severe reaction, like being born like a worm in a sewer. So the worm in the sewer, all he can eat is stool. So if you ever open up a septic tank for a septic tank of like I have a septic tank. If you open it up, you'd be shocked what you would see. Hundreds and thousands of worms just moving around and eating stool. They're living entities like us, right? But they have that particular body just to eat stool. They're all living entities. They all have souls. So it's a shocking thing to see. And some people take birth like that, in that body. Or one time there was a deer that was injured severely by a car, and it ventured into the neighbor's treed area, which is right on the other side of the fence that divides us from the neighbor. And then we started smelling this very bad smell. So I went to see what it was. I didn't know it was the deer. I knew that a deer got injured, but I didn't know it was a deer. So when I started looking around, I found the deer that was dead. But there is hundreds and thousands of worms eating its flesh. Now, where did they come from? Some of them come from inside the body of the deer, and some of them come from flies that lay their eggs on the rotting flesh of the deer. So nature has its way of recycling things. Until there's no flesh left, no blood, nothing, just bone. And then eventually the bone also disappears. So that's material life. Okay, thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai.